Hello, welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick, and we've got something a little bit different today. I'm going to be comparing the Adidas Boston 12, one of my favourite shoes from last year, to the current crop of super trainers that have come out in 2024 to see if the Boston still holds up as a top option on the market. Adidas has not updated the shoe in 2024, and it's fair to say it still is a very good shoe, and one that not only comes in a lot cheaper on list price than a lot of the super trainers that have come out this year, but is often in sales, especially with Black Friday coming up, and has a slightly different feel to most of the other trainers that have rods or plates or something in them on the market, I would say. So I thought it was worth refreshing my memory with the Boston by running in it today and then doing this video comparing it to all the shoes that have come out this year, because it's fair to say we've had a really good year in terms of some very impressive kind of all-rounder daily trainers with plates, without plates, loads of really good shoes out there. So does the Boston still hold up? First, a quick run through of the design of the shoe and the specs. It's £140 or $160, although as I mentioned, it does often pop up in sales these days. Weighs in at 259 grams or 9.1 ounces in a UK 9, and it has a 7mm drop with a stack height of 38mm at the heel, 31 at the forefoot. You've got a very lightweight mesh upper with very minimal padding around the back of the shoe, not much on the tongue there at all. You've got a dual density midsole with a layer of Light Strike Pro and then Light Strike EVA at 2.0 underneath that. So you've got two different foams there with Adidas's energy rods running in between those. These are a glass fiber infused version of the energy rods, and they're basically there to give you that little bit of stiffness and the extra kind of propulsion you get from things like plates in other shoes. And you have a continental rubber outsole, really good coverage on the forefoot, two strips of rubber at the back, a very reliable rubber that we've seen in lots of Adidas shoes that does give you really good grip. Quick word on the fit of the Boston 12. This is a UK 9, which is a US 9.5. That's my normal size for Adidas. It has a fairly dialed in fit. It's not the widest shoe in the world, but it's been okay for me in terms of length and width. I have someone who has quite a narrow foot, it's fair to say. It's a pretty fussy upper. We're going to talk about the upper a lot with the Boston, we always do. It's a really racy upper, which does mean it's not the most comfortable for like daily training. It's quite easy to get things like lace bite and general discomfort. I've heel locked it to make sure the heel didn't rub in any way as well. So yeah, it's a very minimal upper, which means the fit is, like I say, quite dialed in and something you have to work on a little bit to make it comfortable for your general runs, but it does give you a nice, secure and fast feeling when you are going out to do a session or even a race in the shoe. Obviously, we have our full review and lots of other coverage on the Boston up on the channel if you want a more in-depth run test. This is going to be quite brief before we look at the comparisons of other shoes in the verdict, but it is a really versatile all-round shoe. I found it pretty good for easy runs and long runs and that kind of thing. I think some people might find it a little bit too minimal for that. It's like they're not the most comfortable shoe, either in terms of the midsole or the upper, but I do think it is one that lots of runners will find very good for pretty much everything in terms of just daily training. And then it has a nice lightweight and nimble feel with that Light Strike Pro, giving you that extra pop when you are doing fast running as well. So to kind of remind myself of the Boston, because it's been a while since I used it, I took it out this morning for an easy to steady hour or so with some strides at the end. So starting off very relaxed because it was kind of wake up and get straight out the door, and then finishing kind of around 6-minute miling pace, something like that. And yeah, it is good to get back in the shoe. It's certainly got a more direct and grounded feeling than a lot of the super trainers I've been testing this year, especially under the forefoot. You get more ground feel. It's also quite a narrow and nimble shoe. Lots of these kind of big super trainers have started to widen out to add stability and that kind of thing, and the Boston doesn't feel unstable to me, but it does definitely have a much nimbler feeling than a lot of those shoes. It's not the most rockered shoe either, and I say it's probably not as comfortable as some of the super trainers that have come out that have focused more on daily training, but I do think it does have enough comfort. Like I say, like as a heel striker, I find this wedge of Light Strike 2.0 quite soft actually when I'm running at easy paces. It does feel like quite protective and that kind of thing. Then you get the slightly more propulsive feeling from the forefoot. It's not an all-out comfortable shoe. I think it is one that probably puts a bit more impact through the legs than some of the other super trainers out there these days, but I do think it's pretty comfortable still and very versatile. And it was quite wet today as I was running in the shoe, and that's another good thing about the Boston. You do get that really good outsole for winter training with that continental rubber. The verdict on the Boston itself is that it is a very good shoe and certainly worth its price tag, which is a lot lower than a lot of the super trainers out there. But the main thrust of this section is going to be comparing it to all the shoes that have come out this year to see if the Boston still, holds up against them. Because, in 2023, I probably would rate it right up there as, comparable to the Endorphin Speed 3 as among my very favourite super trainers. There's been a few come out this year that I really like as well. So let's see how the Boston compares to those. So we're going to be looking at, not just plated shoes, but also some of the, the best unplated shoes that are in this kind of super trainer category. And then some shoes that are around the Boston's price. So things like the Mach and the Rebel that, have a similar price to the Boston, but don't really have anything like rods or plates in them, but can fulfill a similar role, I'd say. Before we go into the individual comparisons, I'd say for pretty much all of these, the Boston is the cheaper shoe until we get to some of those shoes at the end there, and it's also got the worst upper. I think the only upper that is equally fiddly or nearly as fiddly is the Hoka Mach X2s, but even that I think is a better upper than this one, which I did remind me this morning how annoying it was to try and get the shoe on, get a comfortable fit. My foot just felt irritated by it for the first section of the run, but you do get into it. It is comfortable overall, but it's just a much more annoying upper than pretty much any of these other shoes uppers. First up, we've got the Endorphin Speed 4. I think we do have a full comparison video on the channel. The Endorphin Speed 4 is a great all-round super trainer. It's still probably my favourite up there. I think I like it a little bit more than the Boston. It gives you certainly a bit more comfort for easy runs. It's got much more of a rocker than the Boston, and it is still really fast, I find. Like, I've used it for some hard marathon training sessions lately, and it always delivers. I think you get a bit more comfort and kind of fluidity in the ride over longer distances than the Boston, but Boston has a nimbler feel, a more grounded feel. I think it's got a slightly punchier feeling to it when you're doing short reps and that kind of thing. I think they're pretty comparable in terms of their actual speed when you're looking at those faster runs, but I'd say the speed maybe has the edge for sustaining fast paces, and it certainly feels more comfortable at relaxed paces for me. Then we've got the Hoka Mach X2, which is one of my favourite new shoes of this year. If you can get on with the upper of the Mach X2, like, it doesn't rub your heel in any way. I think it's a tremendous all-rounder. It's got a lot more foam underfoot than the Boston, and you certainly feel that in terms of extra bounce and extra punch off the forefoot in particular. I think it's equally fast, but a more comfortable option for easy runs. Like, it's a bit more expensive, but I definitely rate the Mach X2 higher than the Boston. I think it's just tremendous all-round shoe, and unlike with other comparisons to the Mach X2, the Boston doesn't even have the edge in terms of a better upper, because actually I find this upper worse than the one on the Hoka Mach X2. So yeah, that's when I get ahead of the Boston along with the Speed 4. I'd say they're both really good all-round super trainers, but the Boston is a bit cheaper than both of those shoes. Then we've got the Puma Deviate Nitro 3, a shoe I didn't really get on with. Like, it's one that's veered a bit more to the comfortable end of things, and I didn't find it very comfortable. I found it hurt my Achilles a little bit, and I just didn't find the ride very propulsive. Like, it's got a rocker there, but it doesn't really give you that much back. The Boston has a snappier, nimbler feeling. I find it actually a bit more comfortable, actually, because it doesn't annoy my Achilles, and in general, I think it's a more versatile shoe, a bit cheaper, getting a bit more foam with the Deviate Nitro, and I think you might appreciate that on some long runs, but overall, I certainly prefer the Boston to the Puma. There's a Mizuno Neo Vista. That's a completely new shoe this year, which is a lot softer and bouncier than the Boston. You've got that really high stack of foam, very springy. It's more comfortable for long runs for sure. It's got a lot of bounce for fast running. Boston, again, has a nimbler feeling, certainly feels more grounded and direct and nimble in general. And you can definitely feel that if you're going to do some fast running in the shoes. The Neo Vista is quite good for cruising and doing fast sessions where the reps are maybe a bit longer, but the Boston feels a bit more sharp, like an interval shoe, more of a racing option as well. But the Neo Vista definitely has a much more bouncy and fun ride than the Boston if you're going to use it for kind of daily training, I'd say. They've got the New Balance SC Trainer V3. I've just been testing this recently, got about 50 miles on it. Again, that's another one that veers more towards the comfortable end of the super trainer spectrum. Seems to be designed very much for those long marathon training runs where you're kind of doing a lot of miles, speeding up a little bit. Boston has a nimbler feeling, a much lighter feeling. Again, it's a shoe I would use over the New Balance for fast stuff on the track and that kind of thing. New Balance will have more comfort on long runs, and again, if you're doing extended sessions where your reps aren't at flat out pace, they're just long reps, like I did a 4x4K session, like I prefer to do that in the New Balance over the Boston, as well as easy running. But Boston has a bit more top end speed, and it's so much cheaper. The New Balance has basically priced itself out of the UK market in particular because it's so expensive here, so I certainly wouldn't be paying the extra in the UK to get that shoe over the Boston. You've got the Brooks Hyperion Max 2, which is a much bigger shoe than the Boston. Again, you've got more foam underfoot, you're getting extra comfort on long runs. It's a fair bit more rockered than the Boston as well. It's got a really smooth ride. Again, a shoe that I really like for long sessions, easy to steady, like 90-minute runs, marathon training runs, longer reps at slower paces, but it doesn't have the pace of the Boston for me for those short, sharp reps. It doesn't feel as nimble. It feels much more like a cruisy super trainer again. Boston has a bit more punch. The Light Strike Pro foam, I think, is a bit more explosive as well than the foam on the Brooks. So yeah, I think, again, it might depend a little bit what you're looking for. If you are looking for a daily trainer to do everything in, then something like the Brooks Hyperion Max or the New Balance, it might be more suitable if you don't find the Boston that comfortable for easy runs. But in terms of a super trainer to do fast running in, I think the Boston is quicker than those shoes. Then we've got a couple of big, very expensive super trainers that don't have plates. We've got the Asics Superblast 2, which is a really good shoe. You've got loads more foam on that shoe than you have on the Boston, despite the fact I think it might even be lighter than the Boston. That gives you more protection and comfort over long runs, churning out lots of miles. Like, it's a really good shoe, the Superblast, for your kind of long runs in particular. Again, not quite as nimble and fast as the Boston for really, all-out pace stuff, but I think if you're doing a lot of reps, if you're doing lots of training day to day, the Superblast is going to give you more protection, look after your legs better than the Boston, help you kind of go again the next day, but it's a lot more expensive again, as is the New Balance Balos, which is a little bit different. I think that's a really soft and bouncy shoe with a really pronounced rocker, but it's geared a lot more for easy stuff. Again, you can do reps in it. I have enjoyed doing reps in it because it's a pretty lightweight shoe given the size you have there, but Boston certainly feels like a faster shoe, a more direct shoe, one that's more set up for fast training definitely than the Balos, which is more of a fun, relaxed shoe. Again, they'll both be going in a rotation as a daily trainer. It just might be what you're looking for. Like if you can get on with the Boston's comfort for easy runs, you've definitely got more versatility for fast stuff, I'd say, than the Balos. Superblast is all round, I think, a better shoe, but a lot more expensive, so something to take into account there. Then there's the Nike Pegasus Plus, which is a little bit more expensive than the Boston. Like quite an interesting shoe. It feels like a much snappier, higher drop shoe than the Boston, even though the actual drop isn't that different. Like it's got quite a traditional ride. You've got that Zoom X foam in there, but it's a fairly firm version of it. It doesn't feel actually too dissimilar to the Lightstrike Pro in the Boston, but Boston again feels a bit nimbler, a bit sharper, probably get a bit more punch off the toes with this shoe, and again would be a better interval shoe. That Nike Pegasus Plus has more of a daily trainer vibe to it with a more comfortable upper for sure, and again you can probably grind out long miles a bit better in that shoe, but I do think the Boston is the better shoe in terms of all-round versatility. Again, if you find it comfortable enough for easy runs, I'd be getting the Boston, especially as it's cheaper. And a couple of really good shoes around the Boston's price. You've got the Hoka Mach X and the New Balance Rebel V4. Now, both of these don't have anything like rods in there. They've got pretty standard foams, but they're both really lightweight, versatile trainers that I've loved for everything from kind of short reps on the track to longer runs. I think they're really great value shoes and are a bit more comfortable than the Boston in terms of the upper. They feel like they have a better vibe for daily training. If you're going to sub in one of those shoes as a race shoe, then I think the Boston would be the one I'd use. But for an all-round mix of training, I really like the Mach X and the Rebel V4, and I don't think they lose much in terms of running fast because of the lack of a plate or rods or anything in them. They're just really good shoes all round. Boston does have a bit more punch to it, but if you're generally someone who gets to have quite long runs most of the time with your training, I think the Mach X probably is a bit of a better option. Boston is the faster shoe again. You could even kind of combine a couple of those shoes in a rotation if you wanted, a fairly cheap and really good pair of shoes that can cover a lot of bases. All right, that is a little run through of the Boston versus the shoes that have come out this year. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Are you still a big fan of the Boston? Let us know in the comments below. Please do like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.